This is An Infinite Path, spoken word essays by Niles Heckman, some of which go on to become our documentary short subject films, half of which release freely here through the podcast, all of which can be found through your support at nilesheckman.com. Warning, contentious message ahead. As Mark Twain once said, if you find yourself agreeing with the majority, take time to pause and reflect. When growing up, adolescent sports are great for young rugrats to get exercise. It's a light recreational group activity which teaches kids to work in teams to cooperate, as well as instill drive and passion about goal accomplishment through physical activity. Individual physical accomplishments like running, cycling, skiing, or weightlifting are good because they create a dynamic where you are engaging in exercise with the only one you really need to compete with being yourself. It's fun if it stays minor and light, but things go weird when the dad on the side of the field at the Little League game is really seriously emotionally involved in the game's outcome. We here at the Student of Life Essays have spoken on being process-oriented over goal-oriented. Process orientation is expansive and leads to personal growth. Goal orientation is contractive and fueled by competitiveness. We've also discussed the child asleep robot factor of many who are essentially little kids in adult bodies. This overly invested Little League dad is the prime amalgam of these two concepts, and his personality type can be fractaled out into many more other sheeple currently in manifestation worldwide. In virtually no other area is this more apparent than that of sports fans. When sports go from being a few kids on the field to someone getting their own personal exercise for health reasons, into collegiate, professional, or Olympic leagues with giant stadiums, annual statistics, audience infighting, doped-up athletes, celebrity worship, corporate sponsorship, and exorbitant salaries, then we have big problems because things are too big. Not coincidentally, it's the same problems caused by big religion, big government, big science, and big corporations, which are ultimately all about the dollar signs and restrict human consciousness. Money is the partial root of all evil in its current centralized structuring, with the profit motive being the core problem of professional big everything. Evident by the fact that the National Football League, which up until recently was a tax-exempt organization making billions of dollars a year, has proven to care more about covering up the long-term effect of traumatic brain injuries of its players than their long-term health and well-being, because the dollar signs are king. American sports logos are red, white, and blue to try and subconsciously imply being a fan of your local city's team is patriotic, when in reality they are really there to somewhat stagnate human potential. If a sports player's life growing up is so void of spirit that they are constantly fighting the boredom of small-town USA or inner-city urban unfortunateness, that their only options other than working at the local minimum wage job or hustling on the street are to try and excel at professional sports or join the military, then it's time to upgrade the society's operating system to a new version. Sports scholarships have a silver lining of a potential subsidized or even free ride schooling, which is good because all schooling should be free anyway. However, the college player's life on the field is held to the highest importance regardless of their academic performance or behavior off the field. Ergo, the university that covers up the sexual abuse of female students at the hand of a star athlete who brings in the big dollars for the university. The endless profit motive, which ramps up at university level and then essentially skyrockets at professional level, conceals the innocence and the joy of the game by instilling an endless profit goal orientation motive. This is no more evident when watching a team which has lost the big game look like the sky has absolutely fallen. Even with all the back hard work by the players, which is to be honored and respected, ultimately the championship trophy or ring they would attain means nothing to their soul growth. Professional teams themselves also do not bring economic prosperity or massive revenues to their cities. They instead enrich a few ultra-rich team owners in the current low bandwidth, heavy corporate crony centralized capitalistic system which grossly misdistributes wealth upwards. Yet the profit motive is not the real tragedy with grossly overinflated sports. The real tragedy is their ability to waste fans as individuals, groups, cities, or even the majority of entire countries' time. Big money sports are there to waste your clock when consumed. They are consumption without creation events, soap operas without end, which ultimately do nothing, are void of substance, and have little to no ultimate importance in the society, to only be recycled the next season. Professional sports are a very useful tool for the malevolent power pyramid of control because it knows an ignorant, dumbed-down populace loves the distractions being put in front of them. It takes exorbitant amounts of time to follow a team and all of its players, and even deeper their statistics. The Romans called it bread and circuses. They have always been used as a tool to distract and mindlessly entertain. Since the days of the gladiators battling in the Colosseums of Rome to modern-day small-town USA or big city UK, the profane have always revolved around the sporting ring and its modern-day oily tentacle arms of dive bars or pubs which broadcast sporting events. Larger still are those at home who pop a beer and happily waste 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 hours watching the game in a larval-like state. Watching TV is essentially the same as sitting sedentary staring at shapes and sounds given to you by the Joker spirals of misinformation while gazing at a wall. Then the remote viewer may also burn another hour or two watching a post-game show. Never in history have so many men talked about so little as a sporting post-game show. Since I was a little kid and first heard about and saw friends and their parents doing a fantasy football team, all I could think about was what a staggering waste of time it was, and how boring it would be to be that invested in something which has so little ultimate meaning and personal return. During the days of the Wild West, American saloons oftentimes were sad places of sorrow and personal destruction. Since the dawn of the Don't Think tube, otherwise known as television, one would usually always find a bar with a telly existing with a game on inside, if not even an array of multiple televisions. European pubs have a more sophisticated and welcoming interior with a more family-friendly orientation over the seediness of American dive bars, yet ultimately, for the most part, only result in the same dynamic of a business full of passion-filled, mostly males, the patriarchy, watching European football matches while drinking copious amounts of mentally mind-contracting sanctioned liquid drugs to make their guts grow. Sports arenas are grossly low-resonant places, which waste yet even more time and energy. People can easily burn an entire day commuting to a game, tailgating in the parking lot, sitting at the game eating fecal-filled processed Franken-fried foods such as hot dogs or rice-based American beer, then sitting in massive post-apocalyptic-style gridlock traffic upon conclusion of the event. Most sports tickets these days are three-figure costs as well, so not only have you wasted 3 hours by watching it at home, you're wasting nearly an entire day due to the planning and travel, not to mention the degrading of your bank account. My parents once got free tickets to a National Football League game, and all my mother could say is, "It was such a long day, I don't think I'll ever want to do it again." And yet the horror show gets even more bloody. Season ticket holding is the lowest common denominator. Someone who goes to every game, devoting time and time, week after week, month after month. If you know a season ticket holder, it's likely that person's whole life will only consist of their slave job and their sports team they are a fanatic follower of. The rest of their undeveloped cup will be likely shallow and completely empty. Aleister Crowley wrote in the introduction to his seminal book, The Book of the Law, "Consider the popularity of the cinema, the wireless, the football pools, and guessing competitions. All devices for soothing fractious infants, no seed of purpose in them. Consider the sport, the babyish enthusiasms and rage which it excites. Whole nations disturbed by disputes between boys. Much like comic book movies, sports trap us in a juvenile and male-dominated nature of those days growing up on the field and collecting baseball cards. Through our young childhood, we may continue to play sports for years beyond when we really wanted to, because that's what the other kids were doing. When we actually wanted to perhaps be instead reading comics, drawing, or doing something else that resulted in creating over just consuming. When we move into our teens, we will hopefully mature beyond sports and especially sports fansmanship consumption because of a strong desire to continue passions and creating a body of artistic works, which sadly many boys in grown-up men meat suits never do. Imagine an entire sports stadium of fans spending that time in other healthy ways of camaraderie, getting grassroots organized to help improve their local community, or getting locally politically active even, building housing together like the Amish do, for example, group exercising, or maybe even having marathons, restructuring society in some way, such as a festival gathering, even being in some sort of shamanic ceremony, or even engaged in a group meditation. Perhaps a slight cheese and woo sounding, but higher ladder efforts instead of just base chakra cheering with primal lust at multimillionaires running back and forth around on a field or ice rink. So we here at the Student of Life Essays will occasionally and rarely find ourselves in front of a sporting match and can see the entertainment value in it, but we do that in very few and far between numbers. So that's a little bit of a caveat to something that hopefully doesn't sound like we're on a soapbox or too condescending this time around. That being said, I do know a dad who spent years of his son's life growing up being so into coaching, team organization, following college and pro seasons, only in his later life upon being asked, "Hey Bob, are you still doing all that sports stuff?" with him maturely saying, "No, I've got better things to do with my time now." So he grew up a bit later in life. Our society always can as well.